For decades, Ben Shephard has occupied a rare space in British television. A familiar face, a trusted voice, a gentle presence in homes across the UK. Viewers often describe him as comforting, the sort of presenter who brings warmth without trying, whose kindness seems almost stubbornly consistent in a world that changes far too quickly. And beside him, always quietly but firmly, has been his wife, Annie Shephard. Unlike the spouses of many television figures, Annie has rarely sought the spotlight. Many longtime fans know her only from the occasional red carpet photograph, or from Ben's warm anecdotes about their life together. Stories told not for show, but because speaking about Annie always seemed to ground him. They appeared steady, solid, the sort of couple people like to believe still exist, a reminder that long marriages can withstand the noise, the pressure, and the temptation that trails in the wake of celebrity. But behind that calm exterior, something else was brewing. Not scandal, not betrayal, nothing tabloid-friendly or sensational. Something quieter, something far more human, something that, according to insiders, left Ben Shephard stunned in a way few have ever seen. This is the story of what allegedly unfolded, slowly, silently, and then all at once, between one of Britain's most beloved presenters and the woman who has been with him since long before fame found him. A story not about glamour, but about pressure. Not about drama, but about two people wrestling with the shifting weight of a life that changed faster than they ever expected. And a story about a demand, one neither financial nor petty, that insiders say hit Ben Shephard harder than any headline ever could. Chapter 1. A Love Built Far from the Spotlight. Long before the early morning studios, before the bright lights of Good Morning Britain or the adrenaline of Tipping Point, Ben Shephard was simply a young man in love with a woman who saw him for who he was, not who he might become. Ben met Annie long before he became the polished presenter the public now knows so well. Back then, he was chasing opportunities, hustling in an industry that can be notoriously unforgiving. Those early days were filled with uncertainty, but Annie never flinched. She believed in him with a quiet conviction. Friends recall how Ben would speak about her, not with the giddiness of a whirlwind romance, but with the certainty of someone who already felt he'd found home. Their wedding was modest, a small circle of family, heartfelt vows, quiet joy. No paparazzi, no fuss, just two young souls choosing each other. And for years afterward, they remained beautifully ordinary. School runs, family dinners, long weekends tucked away from the world. Annie built a career of her own, working in interior design and creative projects while raising their sons. There was a rhythm to their life, one carved out with care. But life has a way of shifting that rhythm, sometimes subtly, sometimes with the force of the tidal wave. Chapter 2. The Rise of Ben Shephard. When Ben's career began ascending more rapidly, first through GMTV, then Goals on Sunday, Good Morning Britain, and the ever-growing hit that is Tipping Point, it was a thrilling chapter for the Shephard family. But it came at a cost. Television is not a gentle industry. Early mornings, late nights, constant travel, public appearances, emotional demands that few fully understand unless they've stood beneath the studio lights themselves. And through all of it, Annie stood steady. But as Ben's visibility grew, so did the strain. Friends noticed it first, the way Annie would politely decline social invitations because Ben was working, again. The way she would shoulder the family responsibilities with the calmness of someone who had long ago stopped asking for more time, more help, more balance. Ben, ever earnest, would apologize, promise that things would quiet down after this next project, that the long hours were just temporary. but temporary became normal, and normal slowly began to wear thin. Chapter 4. The Silent Pressures of a Public Life. When the public sees a presenter like Ben, they see kindness, humor, and connection. They see someone effortlessly handling live television, engaging guests, comforting audiences. What they don't see is the exhaustion, the emotional labor that builds quietly, the pressure to always be on, the creeping sense that your personal life must fit neatly into the spaces left by your professional one. Annie saw all of it, and as Ben's visibility grew, Annie's shrank. Not in a performative sense, but in the practical one, the one that comes when one partner's life becomes dictated by schedules they can't control. Sources close to the couple describe her as supportive, but human, patient, but not limitless. And while there was no animosity, there was distance. Not dramatic headline-worthy distance, the kind that grows millimeter by millimeter, barely noticeable until one day you realize the gap is no longer small. Chapter 5. A Turning Point. Insiders suggest that what altered the Shephard's usually steady course was not a sudden rupture, but a slow-building accumulation of moments. The missed family gatherings, the birthdays Ben attended by video call, the holidays cut short because work called, the evenings where Annie cooked alone, the mornings she woke up alone. These little things, unremarkable on their own, became weighty over time. Annie reportedly confided in a friend that she felt like she was running the household solo, that even though Ben was physically present on some days, emotionally he was worn thin, stretched by responsibilities neither of them had anticipated growing so quickly. One friend summarized it simply: she never doubted his love, she doubted the life they had fallen into. Chapter 6. The Request That Shook Ben Shephard. Then, according to sources close to the family, came the moment that blindsided Ben. A request, calm, measured, made not in anger, but in heartbreak. Annie reportedly sat him down one evening, after their sons had left the house and the usual chaos had faded into quiet. She wasn't asking for a separation. She wasn't asking for divorce. There were no threats, no ultimatums. She asked for something far more difficult. Time. Not just more time, dedicated time, protected time. Time with their sons, who were now growing faster than either of them had anticipated. Time as a couple, rediscovering what life used to feel like before every hour was claimed by early call sheets and late-night planning meetings. Time as individuals to breathe and recenter themselves. But more strikingly, and more painfully for Ben, insiders say Annie asked him to consider stepping back from at least one major part of his professional life. Not forever, not out of resentment, but because she feared that if nothing changed, something between them might quietly erode beyond repair. Chapter 8. Ben's Reaction. Sources say Ben was hit harder by this request than anyone expected. Professionally, he has always been known as someone who gives everything he has, the sort of presenter who shows up early, learns every detail, treats every team member with respect. His relentless reliability was his strength and the very thing causing a fracture at home. Hearing Annie's request, insiders say he felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Shock at the seriousness behind her words, guilt that he had overlooked the depth of her struggle, fear that he had unintentionally allowed his career to overshadow their marriage, and heartbreak, pure, unfiltered, because Annie had always been his anchor. Ben reported told friends that the conversation knocked the wind out of him, not because Annie was unreasonable, but because she had waited so long to express the weight she had been quietly carrying.